All right, so for this problem from Alex, it's graphing our system of inequalities. And so the very first thing that I want to do when I have an inequality is to graph the boundary line. So the boundary line is just the inequality, but instead of the inequality written, we write an equal sign. And so what happens with that is we're going to be able to figure out basically what's going to be dividing our plane into two portions. And normally think about it like an upper portion and a lower portion. And so to get here, we know that these are lines. So for the first equation, I want to make sure that they are in the y equals mx plus b form, because that's really the easiest for me to graph. So I'm going to move over my 4x by subtracting it. That's going to get me negative 3y. That's all that's left after making those go away. Is equal to, I'm going to put the 4x first with that negative sign, and it's a positive 3, so I'll keep that. Then I'll divide by negative 3. From everything here, we'll get positive y is equal to, these two negatives become positive 4/3 x, and then we have 3 over negative 3, that makes minus 1. So this is going to be my first boundary line that I'm going to draw. And so I know that looking at this, my slope is 4/3, and my y-intercept will be 0 with that negative 1. So I'm going to go to 0, negative 1, and then go up 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, and run to the right 3, and then I'm going to connect them. Before I actually draw that line to connect, I'm going to go back to the actual inequality in the problem. Because it has greater than or equal to, I know it's going to be a solid boundary line. If it did not have the equal to part, then it would be dotted. For the next one, second line, again, I want to put it in the form y equals mx plus b. I'm going to subtract the x to put the x's on the other side and write it first. Divide by 4, we're going to get y equals, it's going to be negative, really there's a 1 in front of x, so 1 over 4x minus 1. So again, that is my boundary. My slope is negative 1/4, and my y-intercept is 0, negative 1. So I'm going to go to that same 0, negative 1 spot, but my slope this time is negative 1/4, so I'm going to go down 1, and then to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you need more points to draw your line, just continue that same pattern. And so we go down 1, to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry about that, it was my daughter. Now we're going to have to do a solid line again because it has equal to on there, so it's a solid line. That's what was already drawn here in this image that was given to me. And so those are my two boundaries. So now what we need to consider is where are we going to shade? And for this, because it is a system of inequalities, really we're concerned with where these shaded sections will be overlapping. So the way that I normally find where to shade is by picking a test point. So I'm going to go back to that first line, and I love testing 0, 0 because that's something really easy to plug in. And you can always plug in the point 0, 0 as long as your lines don't go through them. So to test means I have to consider that very first inequality. I put 0 in, and I want to see if it's going to be a true or false statement. So when I plug in all those zeros, I'm going to get just 0 on the left and greater than or equal to 3. Now, is 0 greater than 3? Is 0 bigger than 3? No, that's false. So that means for that blue line, I don't want to shade up here because that section would include that 0. So what I do want to shade is this down below portion. And every point in this shaded region that I have right now is going to satisfy that inequality. So for the next part, I'm going to look at my other inequality and still test that same thing, 0, 0. So I'm going to have this time 0 plugged in plus 4 times 0 is less than or equal to negative 4. This all becomes 0. Is 0 less than or equal to negative 4? Is 0 smaller than negative 4? No, negative 4 is less. Like, would you rather have 0 debt or 4 in debt? Really, you'd rather have 0, I hope. So this is also a false statement. 0 is not less than that negative 4. So again, I don't want to shade, looking at that green line, is dividing it into two sections. This upper portion, which would include that 0, 0 spot, and this lower portion where 0, 0 is not included. Okay, so I hope right now you can see that overlapping section. That overlapping section is going to be that whole region down below, and that's the actual answer to that system of equations, anything that falls inside that region. So some people don't like shading the whole part. They like considering or thinking about, okay, you shade below the blue line, below the green line, and then think about where that intersects. And so we could really go back in and reduce this or erase this, because that's not part of our solution set. It's only that overlapping section. So hope that helps.